Well, you can't trust County.
Well, Stu, where do we even begin? Because we have so much to get through right now that it's very daunting. First and foremost, let's just say, I'm going to say to you, welcome back, Stu, and welcome back to everybody to season 2 of CreepTime, the podcast.
Woo!
We're here. I hope that intro song was everything they wanted, right?
Oh, I hope it was everything they wanted, especially, well, fingers crossed, the cackling of County.
The cackling. The cackling. Also add that to the cackling of County.
The cackling
add it to the list.
That it came through. That it did.
The cover art too.
The cover art. Oh my God.
But can we talk about the trauma of all the revisions for the cover art? Just the therapy. No, without getting into too much detail, just it was such a process. I'm going to need time off.
I
know we're starting the season, but I'll need time off.
You did some magic. I got to pull back the curtain just a little bit. Creepers.
Do it.
We had a rough go of it with that first kind of round of what that illustration looked like. And Silas legitimately turned into I don't know if you went to Adobe boot camp or whatever you did, but you actually made it look like us. Because I was looking like the Flatwoods Monster in the first, first edition.
One day, like I said, we're going to reveal what the first revisions of the cover art looked like so people can actually die. But yeah, I mean, I can't take all the credit for it because I definitely worked with some illustrators to help. But like I went in there and like did the fine tuning for sure. I'm just happy that it worked out, that it looks like us, because nobody knows what we look like more than us, right?
Right. I mean, it's night and day from like the first go of it.
The first one was something of the devil's. That was something so dark-sided, I shudder to think.
I know.
But
I feel like you captured, of course, like it now looks more like us, but I feel like you captured the whole vibe of like the backwoods stories that we really started with. And then there's also some supernatural, and I don't know. Captured the whole
it all
vibe.
kind of ties together.
Yeah.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm so happy with how it turned out. And I feel like it's the best representation of CreepTime, the podcast. But truly, I will be needing therapy. So far they're like, holy shit. I'm going to have to swear for it. They're like, holy shit. It looks so great. So we're very excited. And what a great way to start off this huge premiere episode, because the only people who know what we're doing, if you remember, are the premium subscribers, because we revealed the case early. So for everybody, I'm sure if you clicked on the episode, you've seen the title, but we are covering the insidious case of Casey Anthony. More importantly, it is the story of Kaylee Anthony, but Casey really is the chief suspect here and who we're going to focus on for the majority of the story. So if there is any episode out there that Nancy Grace could ever listen to, Lord, let it be this.
I am so shocked that you didn't just do it in her voice. I'm a little taken aback.
I was gonna tee it up to you. I was gonna say, and Sue, would you mind kicking us off with a little Nancy for Casey Anthony?
Okay, I gotta stretch.
Warm up. Get yourself warm.
Casey Anthony. You do it so much better than me. But that is
I gotta hold the mic like
10
feet away. I mean, that gave me a good point of reference. Hold on. Give me a second. Casey Anthony is a mother. You gave me a great jump off sentence for the Carl Tansler episode, because you said, "Hey, put a tube," and that is actually the way that I get into it.
Your placement, the vocal technique you're using to get to the K, like the K, I'm so impressed.
I'm mixing.
I know.
It's a
You're literally
mixed voice.
mixing.
I'm
Cat.
it's too Oh man, I'm gonna keep going because I know we've got so much to get into, but come on, like we would be remiss if we didn't do a little Nancy to get into the Casey Anthony case. Well, actually, I should ask you before we jump into it, do you actually remember when this case hit the news? Like, how firm is your memory of this?
Okay, so I know I've told you that I really only know like the top line. I don't remember. I know that this is one of those cases very much like, OJ Simpson, or I'm trying to think of other like famous verdicts that were read. But like
I wrote that right in my notes. I was like, this is comparable to OJ Simpson, a modern day OJ Simpson.
It's one of those cases where like like Michael Jackson, I kind of think of as like a famous verdict reading. Like, where you were when the Casey Anthony verdict was read. I don't remember where I was. Like, I don't know why it wasn't so much on my radar, but
we were young at the time.
We were young. And
I mean,
yeah,
I don't remember it either. That's the weird thing. I do remember, like, obviously it being a part of the news cycle, but I don't know where I was when the verdict was read, because I think let me think. The case happened in 2008, but the verdict actually doesn't come for years after, until 2011. So we were still young, but yeah, I don't remember this being like a topic of conversation with friends. I don't remember seeing it on television live, like people watched.
Yeah, I guess we were like in high school, and maybe we were just so focused on graduating and getting into college or something. But I literally don't remember it being on my radar, other than like briefly seeing it on the news every now and then.
So you're kind of I mean, I've got a lot to unveil for you.
I know.
It is quite an insidious case. It's a huge case, but it is really, really gnarly what happened here. And just, as all cases are, very senseless. But there is something about her story, especially going through and finally like doing this research and getting into the nitty gritty of it, where I was like enwrapped every step of it, for how shockingly obvious is the only phrase I can think to say. Mm-hmm. It's shockingly obvious. But for some people, maybe not, which is also strange.
Well, and for what I remember, before we get into it, I feel like there was the element where her parents kind of always backed her up. And maybe that's just like blind parenting. Like, you're trying to you don't want to believe like your kid could have ever done something like this. But I feel like that was one of the only things I kind of remember, is that her parents continued to try to have her back during all of this. And if they hadn't,
which is
been
strange,
there,
because she did not return that. I mean, that was a huge part of her defense, was like coming out against them.
Yeah.
But also they're kind of wavering on that. And it's interesting when I get into the actual timeline, because in the beginning of the case, it's actually the opposite, where they're kind of on board with, targeting Casey Anthony to be like, where is Kaylee? But by the time everything unfolds, yes, they completely back her up, to the point where it looks like they're taking the fall for some things that they very obviously did not do, nor were they a part of. So it's a little strange there, like the psychology behind why the parents might have done what they did, or if that actually spells something that some people suggest, which is innocence of Casey Anthony. I do not know if I have a huge disclaimer that I'm going to give later on, but like, I certainly don't know if I can believe that Casey Anthony is innocent in this. In fact, I just outright don't. But it certainly supports some of the other arguments to say that the Anthonys, like Cindy and George, might have known more than what they let on.
Mm. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. I am so excited to learn more about this case. I feel like I am so in the dark on a huge part of true crime lore and like culture, and I'm about to get educated.
Well, baby, I mean, I could not have picked a better case for the season 2 premiere. But like I said, before we get into it, I do have a lot of admin to get through, and I just want to say, before we even get into talking about Vegas, let me just I'm going to address something up front. I think we should do this now, just so nobody misses out. Hopefully they haven't skipped through this, because we don't want them to miss out on it. But to celebrate the season 2 premiere, Stu and I have decided that we want to give back to a creeper. And we just want to thank you guys for how supportive and engaged you are, and just like truly what good friends you've been to the podcast. And you've sat down with us, you've sat down with us and you've, gone through these episodes week after week. So we have come up with something. It's an idea. We wanted to launch it on the season 2 premiere. On the next episode of CreepTime the podcast, this will be the second episode of our second season. We are going to be selecting at random one of our current premium subscribers who will win a year's worth of premium access to CreepTime for free. So this means that you could win a full 12 months fully paid, courtesy of Silas and Stu, of premium access to all of the premium episodes, as well as our existing episodes and future episodes over the next year, completely ad-free. And you might also get a bonus surprise from Stu and I. I thought I heard the ice cream truck, and I was like, it's right on time. Unfortunately, it was a siren and not the ice cream truck.
Your eyes just lit up so wide.
Can you hear this in the background right now?
I can hear the siren.
Maybe not.
Very faintly. It's not like our ice cream truck. He's not stealing the show.
Same. He'll be here sure enough. I don't think I heard him last night, actually. But yeah, contest, everybody. So if you're a current premium subscriber, you are automatically entered. There is absolutely nothing you have to do. We will be randomly selecting one lucky winner who will win 12 months of CreepTime Premium fully paid for. All of those episodes are yours. And that's going to be announced next week. We love a contest.
Woo-hoo!
I love it.
And y'all get to save, what would that be? Like close to $100? Put that towards
more than
your
$100
Uber Eats, baby.
When you're listening to CreepTime the podcast. I was like, are we sponsored by Uber Eats?
Oh God.
or your DoorDash.
Or your DoorDash.
Or your Grubhub, whatever. Now, we also have a shout out to give. Oh, I'm so excited for this. Okay. I have to apologize because, again, we were supposed to do this and I was supposed to lead it like 2 episodes ago. I got caught up in the case. So this is a shout out for Tales from the Break Room, this phenomenal podcast. And they were so kind to shout us out. So we wanted to do the same, return the favor, give them their flowers for truly, truly a job well done. I could riff about this podcast freestyle, but I figured I would do my due diligence here and really read the copy that they sent over verbatim. Just because I read through it with you and it just like perfectly describes why you should go check them out and give them a listen. And again, it's called Tales from the Break Room. So I'll give it my spookiest voice I can. Now, what's the scariest thing that's happened to you at work? Don't miss the podcast Tales from the Break Room, where real people share their most terrifying and strange encounters that happened at work. You'll hear stories about stalkers in retail, bizarre happenings in forest service, security guards' most disturbing experiences, and more. With Tales from the Break Room, you'll find your favorite flavor of terror. You can even send in your own scary work experiences to possibly be narrated. We sure as hell should do that, you and I, Stu. Because we could launch our own version of this. You can follow and listen to Tales from the Break Room on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app, or just go to the eeriecast.com website for loads of free, terrifying podcasts, because they actually have a whole collection of fantastic podcasts. So, guys, please go check them out. On behalf of myself and Stu, they are just wildly talented folks over there, and they have a fantastic network, and I cannot recommend this podcast enough. So thanks again for shouting out CreepTime the podcast, y'all.
Can I just say that's such a creative idea?
Isn't it so good?
Because work is already scary for a lot of people. And to kind of take that idea and flip it on its head and kind of really actually be literal about it, I think is really brilliant.
Something about spooky work stories in places that are heavily trafficked by, like, where people from the outside come in, like retail, something about that is scary.
Yeah.
It's inherently scary. It's like, you ever see like those Mr. Nightmare stories about like a stranger inside Chuck E. Cheese kind of thing? Like public businesses where like somebody's lurking late at night.
Yeah.
It's freaky.
Or like closing up shop and realizing there's somebody still in the store.
Forget it. I wrote a fictional story like a year ago about a woman who worked in Nordstrom, and she went to go like lock up and was like going to check the dressing room on her floor and saw feet at the bottom of one of the... I wrote this and I like scared myself boss.
Oh my God.
But then she like tries to like knock and get them out, but nobody answers. So she opens the door and there's nobody there.
Stop.
That
Meanwhile, it's me clinging to the ceiling with like 3 Prada bags. Hiding,
no, it's
Spider-Man
middle school
style.
us sobbing. We're sobbing. I also got to say, like, the people at from Tales from the Break Room, like, who reached out, so nice. And I just kind of like dawned on me yesterday when I was thinking about this and like gearing up for this episode. I'm like, you know, for a genre and an industry, true crime, that is so much about evil and despair and just horrific people, you really do find like the kindest, most wonderful, warm people in this community. Like every creator that I've like worked with in this genre or that I've met, that I've seen at like Parapod Festival, just like the nicest people, like genuinely the sweetest people.
You know, I'm not even that surprised by that because I think to have an interest in this kind of stuff, you have to be like probably a pretty empathetic or emotionally curious person about like why people do what they do, and like seeking to understand that I think requires a little bit of empathy and I don't know, kindness to a certain extent, because you're going out of your way to try to understand some pretty horrific people and things.
That's a really good way to phrase. I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, that is kind of what everyone listens to it for. You're emotionally curious. You're trying to understand the villain in a strange way, and not in a way to empathize with them, but just in a way to understand that kind of evil while also empathizing or sympathizing with victims. There's a lot of things going on when people listen to true crime.
It's true.
A lot going on up in the noggin. It's true. Okay. And now that we've talked about that, Stu, can you please kick us off to just like start from the top about Vegas? And guy, I know like if you want to listen to the Vegas stuff, like please do, because we had a lot of experiences there. But also I know that you probably want to get to the episode. I'm sure I'll put a timestamp somewhere, but we have lots of recommendations for you guys from Sin City. Is that what people call it? Sin City?
Sin City.
Did I make that up?
Well, first of all, can we address the elephant in the room, which is that
I didn't think you'd call me out like that.
The hackery that happened. Have you heard about this?
You mean it?
We're about to have a whole alien episode thing happen again. Yes, in Vegas. They got hacked.
Wait, who got hacked?
The MGM.
What? I was like, you cannot take me back here. You cannot take me back to this
damn thing happened. I should have texted you.
I thought I was going back in time for a second. I was like, the aliens.
Literally today, I was reading about, apparently Vegas is like under hacker attack right now. Like MGM, Caesars, all of their machines, like you would go up to the machine and it says like error message, like not working. They got totally hacked. All of the big, the Bellagio, all the places we went. So I was like, what did we do?
Not the Bellagio.
Like, what did we do?
Dang.
Yes.
That's so scary that like those machines are that vulnerable to being manipulated.
Well, I think the thing is they usually aren't. So it's like, this is big. Like they're under major cybersecurity attack.
What a nightmare for a casino. Like what a nightmare if you took a trip there.
Totally.
I guess you just play like table games.
Well, I don't know what you and I would have done. Well, actually, no. I guess we would have just played the table games. We only did the slots for a little bit, but
I was like, girl, I didn't touch a single. Did I touch a slot? I don't remember.
You touched a slots.
There's a few things I don't remember.
Right before we left. Remember, we're waiting for our Uber, and you just whip out like a 5, and you're like, "Go ahead and use it." And we played the slots, waiting for our Uber.
What a dark hour. Can we talk about how I want you to break down the high roller, high stakes Texas Hold'em poker at the Bellagio scandal, please?
Oh my God. Okay, so creepers.
It was a scandal.
An absolute
Set up the scene.
Scandal.
Where do we go? First night there.
First night there. I am coming in hot. I've told Silas, I'm like, I grew up playing Texas Hold'em with my family. We would sit around. We had legitimate poker chips. I grew up in a big family, so it was intense. We had poker faces. Like I knew what the damn river and flop were when I was like 9 years old. So I'm like, I am ready. I was like, I am not going to bet on any game except I will do Texas Hold'em. So of course we go to the Bellagio, which was stunning, by the way.
Fabulous. Those first couple of drinks we had with, I keep saying her name's Dolores. I don't know if her name was Dolores, our bartender.
Either Debbie or Dolores. And we went to Petrosian, like the little mini Petrosian inside the Bellagio, which is just like so beautiful.
Lovely. Divine.
But anyways, we've got a couple drinks in us at this point, and I'm like, I'm going to play good. Texas Hold'em. And you're like, okay. And so at the Bellagio, which is like one of the nicer casinos, I put my name down for the wait list, and I'm just thinking it's going to be like a table game, just like when you were playing blackjack, like pretty, like anybody can walk up, anybody can play. Oh no, baby,
ma'am, right to the high stakes, high bet only area. We weren't, I have to like reiterate, like we weren't in like the area with the slots and the normal table games. Stu went right into the private high bet only area and put her name on a list.
I still, you even saying that back to me, I'm like, what was I thinking? But I truly,
you were feeling good.
I knew. I don't think I realized that it was like the high bet room or like the legitimate poker room. Like I really just
we definitely knew what the minimum bet was, but I didn't know that either. I was like, we know what the minimum bet is, so I'm like, maybe that's just normal because I've never played Texas Hold'em, so I wouldn't know anything. And you had such confidence walking in that I believed anything you told me.
I was like, what did I keep saying? I was like,
oh, I'll tell you exactly. First of all, I know you were feeling it. You were feeling yourself a little bit. You came. If I could paint the picture for you guys, I'm sure you've seen pictures, but Stu came in looking hot as hell, tight ass corset, wearing glasses indoors. It's 11 p.m. We sit down. They're like, okay, you're on the wait list. You can take a seat at this empty table inside like the high bet area where people are just like, there's a lot of money moving around. And you just like looked around with your drink and you turned to me and you said, I'm about to sweep. You said something to the effect where you were like, they're not going to know what hit them. They're like, they don't even know what's about to sit down at that table. And I believed every second of what you said. So then when they called you over, they were like, table reserved for Miss Stu. And you went, let's go get it, baby. And I followed you over with a camera in my lap. You took a seat right at that table. And guys, let me just tell you, when Stu came up, I showed up behind her because I was allowed to sit behind her like a bodyguard. She sits down at the table, sunglasses on, just takes a quiet look around. They were shook. They were like, she's about to destroy this table. They were messed up.
And the only thing I destroyed was my bank account, and the only thing I swept were the floors that evening because I lost all my money within 7 hands. But
I didn't know what was going on, baby. I just know there was like, I think we put 300 in or something like that.
Something like that.
Or
maybe it was 150.
Something. I remember a couple hundred was taken out.
Couple hundred. And creepers, I sat down at this table and it was like, people like guys with one AirPod in, like not looking up, like everything was moving so fast. I didn't even
stacks of chips, huge amounts of chips,
like 20,
tens of thousands of dollars,
like 20 grand. The guy next to me had like 20 grand, and the guy next to him had double that. And I remember sitting down going, "Oh no, oh no, this is not going to be good."
But when they break down your money into like chips, it looks really tiny. So like $150 could be like 4 chips, depending upon how they break it out.
Totally.
So you showed up with like a tiny little stack of chips.
The tiniest stack. And they were moving so fast that I didn't even have time to think. Like I would look at my cards and the only thing I kept saying to myself was like, okay, just fold. Because you'll stick around long enough until your blind is gone. Creepers. I do have to say, I have to pat myself on the back. I didn't break.
You should. No, you did not.
I didn't break. I didn't go, oh my God. I was like, okay, I'm going to make these guys believe that I belong here.
I mean, that would have been terrible. If you just went, oh my God. I would have had to escort you away.
But damn did I try. I did try. And I lost it
you
all.
Did. It seemed like what was probably several minutes seemed like 45 seconds. And
really
I wasn't sure what was going on because a lot of things were just moving very fast. And then all of a sudden, all your chips went away. And you you swiveled around to me in your swivel chair and you went, I'm done. You said, I'm done. And you stood up and we walked out together. And I said, we can win it back. We'll win it back.
I'm actually crying. Oh my God.
That was such a perfect entrance to the Bellagio, to Vegas for you. That was
perfect
phenomenal.
To Vegas. It was so humbling, let me tell you. That was so humbling.
But we were up after that because we played blackjack right after.
Yeah,
we were up like
$150.
Well, I mean, I know a thing or two. I like to say I know a thing or two about blackjack. I certainly do not, as I've told you.
You knew something. You knew something when we were there.
Not the following night. I did not know a damn thing.
Well, Friday, you hit the ground running. You made that money back so fast.
Well, because blackjack is really fast. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Like, it's so crazy. You could go up to a blackjack table. Do not do this. And you could throw down $100 and in 11 seconds, you're up another $100. Like, it's that fast, or you're down. As I certainly was the following night, because we'll talk about the following night, but we came back to our place, the Horseshoe, which was fabulous. Dita Von Teese is performing there. Go see her. Oh. And it was so late after we got back from all the things we were doing that night. We had been drinking. You're like, I'm going to go to bed. And I was like, I'm going to stay down and play one round of blackjack.
And I knew.
Stu, that was one of the last things I remember of that night. It was one of the last things. I sat down at the table and the rest was kind of like a shaky, it was like the butterfly effect.
Right,
like my world was like wobbling. And then I just remember seeing the cashier at a certain point because I had burned through all the money I had. So I was taking out more money. And she came up to me, or I went up to her and she was like, I hoped I wouldn't see you again. Good luck. Was she real?
No.
Was she a real person?
No one in Vegas is real. It's all a simulation.
They're not real. That is Westworld out the ass.
It really is.
The waitress who came up to me and she goes, it's like 4 a.m. and I'm down several $100s and like very sad. And she goes, what can I get you to drink? And I was like, what do you have that's sweet? And she goes, a Mai Tai? I had one eye open. I said, yeah, that's it.
You couldn't pay me to have a Mai Tai at 4 a.m.
I'd never had one.
You were like, one in Vegas.
I was willing to agree to anything because nothing was going my way. But then, damn, was that money out? And the next morning, we had a lovely breakfast. Should we talk about what we did that night?
Yes.
Saturday night. Start from the beginning, Pipey.
Well, we had a fabulous dinner at Smith & Wollensky's. That was
divine.
Insane. So good. And I'm not even like a big steak girly. And that was one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life. Like melt in your mouth.
Your steak especially was fabulous. Oh, what was it? Dang.
I think I
you
just
had a
got
Wagyu.
Like,
hold on.
Oh, yeah. It was Wagyu, which I had never had in my life.
I had
just filet mignon. I think I just had their filet mignon, their regular filet mignon, and it was one of the best things I've ever had in my life.
That steak tartare that we had, which sound like I didn't know if I was on board for a steak tartare, but like I wanted to try it because it was recommended, but like it sounds strange to me. Delicious. It was delicious.
Do you eat red meat? Like
not
normally?
usually, actually.
Neither do
like,
I.
I usually stick to chicken and fish. Like it's if I'm having a steak, it's at a restaurant or somebody else has made it for me. Like I'm not out here making a steak very often.
Same here. I very rarely have red meat, and that was between the steak and then the steak tartare, which in theory I was kind of like, oh gosh, that might upset my stomach. It was absolutely divine. Everything they served was like one of the most delicious things I had ever had. And maybe that's just because I've been having a lot of girl dinners recently. But I was like, wow.
Girl dinner.
Yeah.
I know. I know. We were also really well taken care of. I must say, like they were so kind to us. They sat us in a beautiful. Well, okay, can we just clarify where it actually was again? Because I don't think I clocked where it is because we were lost trying to find it.
It was at the
Was it in the Venetian?
The Venetian, yeah, it was in the Venetian.
Okay, it was in the Venetian, and it overlooked the canal.
Yes.
Yeah, the Venetian canal that runs inside. So it's inside. Because we went through hell trying to find the place, and we must have asked at least 10 people, all of which had a different answer as to where it was. Like people who work in the building, they're like, "You're going to want to go over to the next resort," and I'm like, "Are you sure? Are we sure about this?"
And you know what I realized now, looking back on it, it must be impossible to have a sense of direction living there or working there.
I mean, maybe you really just know and stick to your territory. But when we did find it, it was like heaven's gates had opened. And like I said, they sat us in like a private dining area. We had the best wait staff. I mean, could not have asked for a more knowledgeable, a kinder server. He was just fantastic. And that was only the beginning of the night, because then we had to wrap up dinner and we had to make our way over to Pier 17, which, if you don't know what Pier 17 is, because I didn't, we were going to go see Absinthe later that night. That's a whole other thing in a second. But before we went to Absinthe, shout out to Reed for taking care of us. He brought us over to Pier 17, which is like the speakeasy that's right outside of the Absinthe tent outside of Caesar's Palace. Fabulous drinks. You got champagne. You were a champagne girly all night.
I was champagne girly all night.
I got unicorn juice.
I remember. I was going to say, I know you got something
This was the first omen. This was the first omen where I was like, the Mai Tai was going to come later that night. I was like, yes, I want unicorn juice. Absolutely, I do. Are you joking?
You were on an exotic vibe, baby.
It was so fun, though. I mean, what a perfect like treat to have right before we went into the tent. Did you have any idea what you were getting into? Did you know?
Can I just say, us reminiscing about this, I'm like literally emotional. Those were some of the best memories of my life that I will take with me, because first time in Vegas,
such an amazing weekend,
has already got to be like such a insane memory for any human to have. But like the way that we did it up was just the best. So sorry.
I wanted you to have such a good time.
Oh
no, I'm
God.
so happy
you
had such a
everything
great weekend.
You planned. Like I just like the best memories with you. Like it was just so much fun.
That makes me so happy.
But the moments, like when we were in Pier 17, and then Reed was telling us like about his life and how he had actually been a performer, and then getting like to go into the tent. Going into the tent, I was like, oh, it's Vegas.
This is the Absinthe. For anyone who doesn't know, this is the Absinthe tent outside of Caesar's Palace. It's one of like the most coveted circus shows that you can see. That wasn't, because it's my first time seeing it too, but going in, my stomach dropped because I was like, we're about to see something. We're about to see something.
And our waiter at Smith & Woodlinski's had said, get ready. It's one of my favorite shows. It's a little bit raunchy, but the talent is amazing. And I was like, that is our vibe. So, and it did not, I mean, it lived up to everything that I was thinking it might be or could be.
Could not have been a better, like it was perfect. We were really well taken care of in there. Shout out to our lovely waitress in there, because we had some premier seating, because we were on a table that the like performers go on. So also me trying to take a video of that and accidentally doing an upskirt
literally
shot.
Me too. That's exactly what I did. I was like, this poor woman. I'm like filming myself being so excited, and I'm fully doing an upskirt shot of her.
I'm sure that happens three times a day at that show. I didn't realize they had a dual cast for that show. I learned that because we got to meet the cast or a couple of them. Yeah, that's what she said. I was like, I can't believe you guys do this 3 times a day. She was like, well, only 2. There's an alternate cast.
It's 3 so they have performances a day?
Yes. I think every single day of the week.
Oh my God. I didn't realize that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about going to see that show is like in that space, because I've seen a show every time I've gone to Vegas. This was by far the best show I've seen. Absinthe was the best, because you go into the tent, there's not a bad seat in the house. Because it's intimate. Like I've seen Cirque shows where I've been like having to squint, and I love Cirque, but I'm like, I can't really see what's going on. You don't miss any of the action because it's up in your face.
And the audience like interactions that they do are so damn funny. Like It was like
improv queens, really.
Improv queens, and the balance of humor, raunch, and just talent was insane. Like, and I'm not really somebody that, like, I think if you give me on a platter, like, would you rather see a circus show or like some very intimate, like acoustic concert or something? I probably would pick the intimate thing. That was like, that was art. And I know that it's super raunchy and some people would probably
it really was,
I
though.
mean, it was crazy amazing. Like something I had never seen in all my years of like going to theater and performances.
That's the exact way to put it. It's like something that you won't see anywhere else. Because I've seen a lot of circus. Like I said, I'm the opposite of you. When I hear like acoustic concert versus circus, I'm like, bring on the clowns.
Yeah.
I love a circus. I love that. I've seen circuses at like fairs and traveling shows, but like something about this, Vegas does circus so well because it's elevated circus. You know what I mean? It's spectacle. You're going to see the most amazing acrobatics and tricks, but you are going to get very well crafted humor and bits and a flow to a show. And it was burlesque. It was spectacle. It was magical. I loved it. Every second of it. I was so happy that we got to see that. You have no idea how much that meant to me that like we got to see that together for the first time.
Oh my God. So fun.
If you're in Vegas, guys, I'm telling you, like, you're not going to have a bad time at Absinthe. You're going to have, and they do shows at 11 p.m., which is kind of rare because most shows in Vegas are 7:30 and 9 p.m. Absinthe does, I think, 7, 9, and 11. So you can catch them for the late show.
I cannot imagine what that late show is like. Knowing that we went to the middle one, the late show must be ridiculous in the best way.
Well, you know where we were during that time? We were trying to get into Omnia. We were trying to get into Omnia. This is foul. I can't talk about this. I know I brought it up.
We can't do it. We can't do it.
I'll just say, needless, we did not get into Omnia. Your loss, Omnia.
Humbled real
maybe
quick.
Maybe next time. So quick. Riding on that high. We were just drinking too much.
Yeah.
I was. But had a fabulous night. And then I lost all the money. The next morning, what could be better to cure a hangover than Cassie's Beach House?
Honest to God, that Cassie's Beach House is like somewhere I will definitely go back. Because first of all, the Virgin
You were
Hotel,
loving it. You were living in the Virgin Hotel. I could tell you were like, I'm into this.
It's. I feel like now that I'm a Las Vegas aficionado, apparently.
You're a seasoned girl.
I'm a seasoned girl for my 2 days there. But I feel like you were saying, you were like, being on the Strip is like what you got to do if you're like visiting for the first time, which like, thank God we did that because it really was like the being shot out of a cannon in the best way, like the whole experience. Like you just get it immediately. But I feel like if you go to Vegas a lot, like Virgin is a little bit off the Strip. It's a little bit more like modern and just like still has the casino-y Vegas element, but it's more.
Oh, totally. I would say it feels kind of Palm Beachy, maybe because it's away from the Strip.
Yeah.
Something about it reminded me of Palm Beach.
Yes.
And just a little more space, less crowds.
Yeah. And then Cassie's Beach House is like, or Cassie Beach House is like, kind of got that Montauk-y, like Hamptons or Southern California.
Hamptons. What a fun way to describe.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's got that whole vibe to it. And it was honestly the perfect way to kind of like wake up the next morning. I mean, we literally immediately went to a lounge section and were able to just like relax.
Thank God they put us in a place with like pillows and basically a bed for me because as soon as we had a lovely waitress, but as soon as they dropped like coffees and like our dips, you got an Aperol spritz at like 10 a.m.
I did. I was like, let's just do it.
I was like, would you mind if I just close my eyes? And you said, baby, sleep, baby. I
said, go to sleep.
I laid back and I knew in my heart of hearts, I was like, she's going to take pictures of me. But I don't have a choice right now. I have to rest for at least 5 minutes.
I just had to capture it because there was something about us sitting there, and then there were all these other influencer, like very obviously, they just had that influencer
you can spot
vibe.
Them. You can spot them in the wild
around us.
The waters are kind of muddied because like now I can't tell I'm like influencer or porn star.
Right.
Because it really is, they look very similar.
Yes.
And I'm sure people say the same thing about us.
They definitely don't. When we showed up looking like bats out of hell, I mean, we literally were like one eye open.
My cargo pants and my like twisted Target shades. You're telling me I wasn't up for the candidacy of influencer or porn star?
I think they were like, are we being pranked? Like, what is this? But the influencers...
Interviewing waitstaff is what they saw.
Exactly. But you know the influencers I'm talking about that were sitting like across from us who were like like just outfits, makeup, glam. And I just had to take a picture of you because I was just cackling to myself as you were sleeping that like this waitress is taking care of us and then taking care of them and looking at us probably going, how did this happen? Why are they here?
It was a daycare. It was a daycare center. And we were being taken care of by a caregiver is what was really happening. But I will say what was nice about Cassie, is it Cassie or Cassie's beach house?
I think it's Cassie's beach house.
Okay, I'm saying Cassie's as if I know her. I don't know who Cassie is, but I love your beach house.
Yeah, it's like Barbie's dream house, Cassie's beach house.
It really is, though, because it's right next to the resort pool. So the second that we were done, because we had great food there. I mean, the dips we had, the ricotta pancakes were actually so good.
Yes.
Guys, if you stop there, please get those. Like there was a select group of foods that I think actually cure hangovers for me.
Yeah.
One of them is grape juice for whatever reason. I learned this in college. The other would be those ricotta pancakes.
And for me,
it's the only thing.
The freaking meze dips.
Yum.
Those are so good.
Yum. I know. But what was nice was like the second that we finished, we just like kind of waddled right out to the pool in the back. I mean, I certainly did. Girl, didn't we like, I like vaguely remember us like being like, oh, take a video of me walking. And then I looked back at the video of me walking and I was like, I'm doing anything but walking. I was like, I'm struggling to like keep myself afloat on pavement. It's really a difficult time.
Fell asleep
in my
again outside
on the little like
on the day bed.
It was the day bed. Yes, until we were asked to leave.
And I also took a picture of you there because it was just too funny. I couldn't.
I know. I did. I bounced back though. I felt better after that because we went to Zach Bagans.
How do we even begin with Zach Bagans with the creepers?
Oh, spooky. If you could sum it up in 3 words, what would you say? Your experience at Zach Bagans.
Long.
It is long. That's true.
I would say long. Variety. There's a lot of different stuff in there. And
the wincing.
It's spooky, but it's also like it's spooky.
I was about to make a crass joke and I was like, now what about the museum? As if you were describing Zach Bacon himself. Long, variety, and spooky.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff
I would agree with all that.
There's a lot of different stuff in there. There's something for everybody.
You're not going to get bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the historical stuff and the stuff that belonged to celebrities, because it's my second time going there. He did have some new stuff. Like seeing the James Dean thing was really cool.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Yeah, anything that was like historical or like belonged to a celebrity, because you and I, we love movie memorabilia and stuff like that. I'm a sucker for it. That was the one thing we didn't get to do, Planet Hollywood.
Oh, damn.
I'm already itching to go back.
Oh, my God.
I have to tell you.
Well,
Christmas trip,
or we can just go to Myrtle Beach because they've got a Planet Hollywood too.
Oh, not just for Planet Hollywood. I want the Vegas experience again.
I'm kidding. Please, God. We're going to Vegas.
Would you say at the Horseshoe again? Would you say there?
Definitely. I mean, I felt like the Horseshoe was the size of the room was huge. It was.
It really was. And I've stayed in several Vegas hotels. Like that was the biggest room I've ever had.
It was huge. It had everything you needed. It wasn't, like something, glamorous,
wildly opulent. Yes. Yeah, it wasn't.
But it was perfect. Like, because Vegas, you're not really in your room. You're hanging out and then you're immediately going back out. That's a good point. So I don't really
Caesars and Bellagio. That's like where you want to stay if like you want to hang in your room. Yeah. That's like I'm on my honeymoon or like I want the jacuzzi tub. This is not that.
No.
And for anybody who's wondering, the Horseshoe was formerly Bali's. They did a $1.4 billion renovation. I read about this.
Wow.
And it's super souped up. Again, Dita Von Teese is performing there. And yeah, I feel like it was perfect for our stay. The table limits are really low. Like the minimum bets are really low.
Yeah.
As I learned, sadly, when I went down all that money. I can't even. Oh, God, it makes me so upset. But that was it, really. After that, we hopped our asses right on the plane, and we're 50 minutes in talking about Vegas.
I know.
Holy God.
Vegas, and then baby, the Magic Castle.
I didn't even have it in my notes. I was like, what more is there to chat about? The Magic Castle. What was your experience, Madame?
I had the best time. I thought that was so fun going into. Do you know when that mansion was actually built? Like, was it in the 20s or 30s?
Oh, I thought you were about to tell me. I was like, no, when?
I don't. It seems
I know
like
how long the Magic Castle's been there. Well, they just had their. I think I checked it. Their 60th anniversary. So, but I don't know if that was when the castle was constructed. It might have been something well before that, and then it was taken over and turned into a private members club. What was the name of the ghost pianist?
Oh my God, it was like,
was it
Isabel?
Norma?
Oh, Norma. Maybe that was it.
Was it Norma?
That was my favorite part of the whole night. I have to say, that was so much fun.
Girl, I don't know if you remember this, because I know we were drinking towards the end of the night, but we sang the entirety of "I Dreamed a Dream."
Oh, I remember.
From Les Mis.
I remember. And I was like, how are we not tossed out of here yet? Like, what are we doing? But that was Creepers.
You went full voice, too. You were giving a performance.
I had no voice the next day.
You had applause. People were applauding you. And then we finished and you said, how about another drink? You like turned into like Karen from Will and Grace.
Literally. Oh, honey. We just had the best
I bet you do a great Karen impression. You probably do such a good one.
Oh my God. I'd have to work on it.
Because you do a great Bernadette.
Oh, honey. No, that's not good.
Give me your Bernadette. Just scratch the urge.
I
That's it.
dream the time gone by.
That was you could be an ADR. Is that what they call them? ADR, like voiceover artist for her?
Oh,
when
yeah.
they,
Maybe ADR.
No. ADR, like when they have to like fill in like vocals in like a movie or something, but the talent doesn't want to come in. They'll bring in an ADR.
Bring me in, baby.
Oh, damn. The Magic. I'm so happy we got to do that. That is a coveted
so
experience in LA.
Thank you again, Molly. That was like the best. That was so much fun.
Molly! Oh, I'm so... Yeah, thank you, Molly, for coming through and bring... Because we had dinner there, too. It was fabulous. Bryce was there. Hannah came. It was wonderful.
So much fun.
I certainly needed to recover after that weekend. It was quite...
Yeah. I don't think I've had that little sleep, that much booze, and that much just running around.
So much. The amount of alcohol we consumed is actually wild to think about what we ate, what we drank.
Oh God.
That much cigarette smoke in the casinos too.
I know. Thank God we didn't smoke anything.
No, I went to the casino in Hollywood, or it's in Inglewood, but it's like the only one that's in like the Hollywood area. No smoking allowed. It was such a bizarre casino, and it's extremely well lit. Oh my God, going in there, I was like overhead, like fluorescent lighting. I forget what it's called, and all the games are like $1 minimum to play, like the table games. And I was like, oh, this is also weird. No smoking allowed. The drinks aren't free. I'm pretty sure. Like there's a lot of.
Oh, I don't know.
It was very strange. And no slots. Slots are not legal in California, or at least in this area.
Wow.
So call your senator today.
I was going to say, I don't know.
Because Mama needs to put a chip. You were itching for those slots, because I took a video of you when I like left you, because I had a raging headache in Virgin, and I'm like, I'm going to go find a couple Advil somewhere, like pawn them off somebody. And I came back and I found you sitting at a slot machine, like droning out.
I had $3 on me, and I was like, you know what? I'll use one of my bucks. And I made it back. And then I immediately
Did you?
lost
Okay.
it. I remember I left the voucher on the table. It was 79 cents. And I thought, someone else needs this.
Sometimes you pay it forward. Yeah.
Pay it forward.
I think I did that in Caesar's Palace because I think I made out with $10. And I was like, you know what? Pay it forward. Somebody stepped on it.
Charity work that we did. Yeah. Somebody blew their nose with that.
Stop. Ugh. Could you imagine how much people like really win in Vegas when they like hit it big? Imagine going your first night and you just like clear out with 10K.
That's insane.
Well, how that like changes your whole trip. That's why things are so expensive there, because they bank on like people coming in and just having a stroke of luck.
Yeah.
Winning a few thousand, and then they're like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to get a room at like the Venetian for the night. I'm going to take myself to Smith and Walensky's, and I'm going to get the Tomahawk.
Oh my God. That also looked amazing.
It did. It really did. But baby, those are all our Vegas festivities, Magic Castle. I mean, if you don't feel caught up after that hiatus and everything we did, I don't know what to tell you. But I am certainly happy and grateful to be back with you for our season 2 premiere, because this is a big old juicy case. I think I have a top line written here, and I'm going to have to go through it anyway just to refresh. But when I get into the timeline of how this unfolds, I just want to brace you. You're going to feel very angry, very mad, as I did when I was reading this. As an experiment for us, I just want to try to keep a sense of neutrality through the whole thing, just to possibly, just for the sake of devil's advocate, or to possibly consider what her eventual defense was, which is that she is innocent. She was not the one who killed Kaylee, but it was her father, George Anthony. So I don't believe that necessarily, but for the sake of argument, I want us to approach it just by considering, well, maybe, because she just did her Hulu thing. That was Hulu, right?
See,
where she did her. Have you seen that?
I was going to tell you, that's the one like touch point I have recently to Casey Anthony. I watched the first episode whenever that came out, and I was kind of like, I had it on the background, but I
actually haven't seen it, so I'm curious to hear what your take is on it.
I mean, I was just so amazed by the they put a lot of money behind that docuseries, like the production value of it. And I mean, I was just kind of, for me, I not knowing anything but kind of the outcome and what the very, very basics of this case, I was really shocked to see that docuseries, the way it was produced and the angle it took. Like, I just, I don't really know where I was going with that, but just to throw that.
Well, was it incriminating? Was it incriminating of her, or do you think it kind of elevated her side of the story?
I felt like it very much elevated her. I thought that it was very much conducted in a way that was to support her case and support her living now in the real world again and trying to make,
Did it cover in that first episode what she's doing now? Because I have in my notes like kind of the last thing we've seen of her.
I want to say she was doing like investigative work.
That makes sense with what I have in my notes. I'll get into it later because you were going to shudder at like how she got into that.
Oh
like,
my God. Okay.
What her conduit was. Like, anyway, so let me get into this top line. Stu, are you ready to get knocked on your ass for season 2?
You're taking me from tomahawk steaks to Casey Anthony in 60 seconds. And I'm braced and I'm
straight
ready.
From the Magic Castle and a Mai Tai to
ready.
Casey Anthony.
I'm ready.
What's new on CreepTime? All right. Now, I will say it is difficult to imagine anyone who has not heard the name Casey Anthony. She's kind of a symbol, I would say. Maybe you agree with this, like in the world of true crime, because she is absolutely the definition of infamous, because she is believed to have done the unthinkable and have gotten away with it, or so it would seem. Now, for the top line of this story, before I break down the entire timeline of this madness, Casey Anthony was the mother of 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony, born on August 9th, 2005, when Casey was just 19 years old, and this was an unplanned pregnancy. I know that was a big focal point of the case when it first happened, but what's interesting about that is that Casey, this kind of gives you like a clue in early on to just what kind of person she is. She was living with her parents at the time. She never even told them she was pregnant. They questioned her because she was gaining weight in her stomach for months, and they were like, Casey, is it possible that you're pregnant? And she just lied. She knew she was pregnant, and she said, no, I'm not, until eventually it was so beyond obvious that she had to come clean, and she would admit, I'm pregnant, and she did not know who the father was. To this day, nobody knows who Kaylee's father is. And though, I mean, Casey was seeing several different men, and it's believed that it's possible her ex-boyfriend, who they think could have been the father, he tragically died in an accident prior to Kaylee's birth. So that's kind of where things started.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that?
I did not remember that or know that.
Like I said, it's unconfirmed if he is her biological father, but everybody kind of believes that that is the story. Now, on July 15th, Casey Anthony's parents, the grandparents of Kaylee, last saw Casey and her daughter drive off from their home in a huff following a family argument. So this is kind of murky about what this was about, and it's centralized around Father's Day. But as the story goes, a lot of it had to do with Casey Anthony's parents, the grandparents, criticizing her fitness to be a mother and just saying, you don't take care of Kaylee, you don't watch her, kind of berating her, and probably rightfully so. And she takes Kaylee, gets in the car, drives off. They don't see her for a month. Goes incognito. Now, 30 days later, it was discovered and first reported by the grandparents that Casey Anthony's car was found abandoned and impounded. They received a letter. So they went to retrieve the car, and there is this distinct odor that's radiating from the trunk. It is the smell of a dead body. Something that Casey Anthony's father would know very well because he worked in law enforcement all his life, and you cannot mistake the smell of a dead body. I read this when I was covering parts of the Jeffrey Dahmer case because his neighbor who had reported him and complained about the smell constantly described how it was a smell that was unlike anything else she had ever smelled. It's kind of a smell of rotting meat, but it's also kind of sweet and like fruity is the only way she could really describe what that distinct smell is like. Now, over a series of very frantic phone calls after this discovery, Casey's mother finally gets a hold of her. And then she learns that 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony is missing and has been missing for 30 days. And Casey did not report this to 911. That is the inception of America's most harrowing true crime case, or one of the most, I would say, that kind of captured the attention of the entire world. And I just want to ask what your initial thoughts are of that. And again, just sum it up in one word. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear that scenario?
Sick. I don't feel well.
I swear to God, I thought you were going to say sinister.
Yeah, sinister is like not even, I feel sick to my stomach hearing all of that. From the rotting smell to the 30 days to the not reporting.
30 days.
I'm sick to my stomach is how I feel.
Did you remember that part of it, the 30 days? Because I think that's the most damning part of the story.
I honestly didn't remember that. It's coming back to me now, but I didn't remember how long it had been that she just didn't report it and how damning that is.
I mean, just imagine that from the POV of the grandparents who, like, first of all, Casey's been missing technically for like a month, like, and then they realize that Kaylee has been missing or kidnapped is what they're told, and she just never called anybody. How mind-boggling that must be as a grandparent. And then, of course, that they've got the additional evidence of this trunk in the impounded car that smells like a rotting body. Actually, where's my phone? Because I have the 911 call that I was going to play for you. Oh my God. Well, I'll go a little bit further into the story just to walk you through a bit of the timeline, and then I'm going to play the call so you can hear in her voice. You're going to hear Cindy Anthony, the grandmother, as well as Casey on the phone. And I would say if the initial 30 days was not damning enough, Casey's response, or really lack thereof, or initiative to want to talk to 911, it's pretty bad. It's actually shocking.
Oh my God.
So let's get into the backstory of the timeline of this day. And just before I do, I'm going to give a disclaimer before we get into this and just say up front, because of the status of the outcome of her trial, although the details researched here are, to the best of our knowledge, accurate and true based on the public reporting of this case, all of this is just an outside allegation against Casey. Just so we're clear. Now, I'm going to jump feet first into this 911 call. So the call comes in July 15th, 2008, where all of this began. Cindy Anthony made a call. She was frantic. She was confused, and she was calling to report her daughter Casey Anthony's car had been impounded and then it was retrieved. And in her words, it smells like there's been a dead body in the car. And what was also heard on this call, she can exclaim that Casey Anthony has just admitted to her that Kaylee has been missing for 30 days without being reported. So I'm going to pull this up real quick. I know. And it's chilling to hear it because I really do believe that Cindy Anthony had no knowing of this. I know there are a lot of conspiracies that like the grandparents were somehow involved. I do not necessarily believe that. And just from the way she sounds, it's kind of like the John Bonet thing with like
I was just gonna say, I feel like I'm having like John Bonet weird like flashback deja vu.
Little flashback.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Hopefully there's not an ad in front of this. That would be sick. Okay. I'm going to turn it up and hold it right to the phone. Let me know if you can hear this.
Okay. 911, what's your emergency? I called a little bit ago, the deputy sheriff. I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her. Your daughter admitted that the baby is where? The babysitter took her months ago. My daughter's been looking for her. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. She just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name? Kaylee. Cayle Anthony. Kaylee Anthony? Yes. How long has she been missing for? I have not seen her since the 7th of June. Is your daughter there? Yes. Can I speak with her? She's downstairs. They want to talk to you. Answer the question. Hello? Hello? Yes. Can you tell me what's going on a little bit? I'm sorry? Can you tell me a little bit what's going on? My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days. And you know who has her? I know who has her. I tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute. Who has her? Do you have a name? Her name is Zenaida Fernandez.
So the call goes on from there. Hopefully you could hear that okay.
Oh, I heard it all. Yeah.
So the call goes on from there for a little bit, and that is the first of 3 calls. But there's one thing, just since it's fresh, and I want to point this out, that maybe it might have been difficult to hear. Now, what you heard in the background for a part of that, and I know it was difficult to make out, Cindy tries to get Casey on the phone after the 911 operator says, "Can I speak to her?" like the mother of the girl. Casey Anthony in the background says, "I don't have anything to talk to them about." This is a woman who is saying that her child has been missing for 31 days, kidnapped by some woman. She has nothing to talk to 911 about. Nothing could be more transparent in the first 60 seconds of this call to me than that this woman knows something that we don't. What's your gut reaction just from the first listen?
Well, I
know that was a lot to take in. I'm
right
sorry.
now. Yeah. No, I have full body chills. I'm trying to be neutral.
I know. I didn't set you up well, did I?
No, well, here's the thing.
Give you a lot to fight up against.
Here's what I just, like, one of the first things that popped in my mind, because we were just talking about the Hulu documentary or whatever, which I know is years and years down the line. The conviction in which she presents herself to be an upstanding citizen in that documentary does not align with what I just heard on that phone call. And to me, I'm like, here I go, not neutral. But I'm literally just saying,
I see those wheels
what I saw on that Hulu documentary for the brief moments I watched it. She is one hell of an actress, because I don't know how you can do that. Like, I don't know how, if we're gonna, like, I'm not even trying to immediately take the side that she did it. I'm just saying, if she did it, if
yes,
the ability to just be that, like, convicted in her, I don't have anything to say to them, just switch it off and compartmentalize, or whatever her brain just did, is like, it's sickening. Like, I'm ill over it. It's so scary.
It's pathological.
Yeah.
Like, there have been a lot of people who have done, like, I mean, outside kind of like psych studies on Casey Anthony. And of course, you'll learn very quickly, she is a liar. She is an inherent liar, but that's not singular to this case, is the thing that you would learn. Casey Anthony, from like the time she was a child, is like a textbook pathological liar. So when you talk about her being, you know, like, wow, like, is it possible somebody could like turn that on, or like, you know, just so firmly believe in their own innocence, even if they're so clearly guilty? It's like, I think on a certain level, maybe she does believe it. Like, it's possible for you to lie so well to the point that you start to believe your own mistruths. Sometimes when I see Casey Anthony, I'm like, maybe this has gone on so deep in her brain that it like didn't happen, you know, like that she just has convinced herself. I don't know what happened to her.
Yeah. Like, fully believing her own myth. Like,
but she must, I mean, to be at this stage, like, even if so, to be at the stage where she's like, I don't have anything to, it's like a child saying, like, I don't have anything to talk to them about. Like, I don't want to talk to 911. Like, it's like a child. Like, she's acting like a child. She kind of reverts. I'll get into it in a little bit, but I'm going to keep going just for the sake of what happens next, because this gets out of hand very fast. So I called attention to what she said, where she said she didn't want to talk to 911. They also said, do you have a name of this person who has your daughter? Because at this point, everybody thinks it's a kidnapping. And she says, Zenaida, right? Now, let's talk about Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, a.k.a., as she would be known, Zanny the Nanny, as we would come to learn. She is the accused kidnapper of 2-year-old. Kaylee is technically, I think, close to 3 at this point. She's like very, very close, but I'll say she's 2 for the sake of the case. Now, immediately, because it's a missing child, police do jump in full force in Orlando, and they attempt to track down Zenaida while simultaneously interrogating Casey Anthony to understand, what the hell is the story here? Your daughter's been missing for 31 days, you're telling us, and you didn't tell anybody. So it's fairly quick that investigators actually realize this woman is hiding something, Casey, because she's sending them on this wild goose chase, and she is lying about almost everything, every single thing right out the gate. She first claimed that she was going on a work trip, so she left Kaylee in the care of her nanny, Zanny the Nanny, 30 days ago, who then took Kaylee and fled, is holding her captive somewhere. So Casey claims she was made aware of the kidnapping, and she was trying to get Kaylee back on her own. Now, Casey was not living at home. She'd previously been living at home with her parents, Cindy and George, at their house. For this month, she was living at her boyfriend's place at the time, and she had never mentioned to him, not even once, or nor was he under the impression that Kaylee was in any danger. He was told, rather, that Kaylee was just with a nanny for the entire month, because he knew that she had a kid. He was just like, where is she? Oh, she's with the nanny, or oh, she's like with my parents. No mention of this alleged kidnapping. And even Casey's parents, when they first tracked her down, she didn't even tell them right away about the kidnapping story, which is also odd. She led them around to like go pick up Kaylee at Zanny the Nanny's, and then realized that she was going to get cornered, and then confessed and goes, I don't have her. She's been kidnapped. I know. Like, enough. We could never do this. We could never be interrogators, because we would go full Nancy Grace. I can see why Nancy ate this up.
What I can't get over is how mind-boggling it is. Her excuse is already child neglect, like in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
And that somehow it worked. It was almost like she played so dumb and so simple that it worked, which is wild to me.
How dark is that too, that the alternative story of it being child neglect is the better story, the better lie to choose in this scenario. That's when you know something very insidious went down here. Now, of course, at this time, police are like, why in God's name would you not report your daughter missing? And Casey claims, she's like, I thought I could handle it myself. I was being naive. I thought I could get my daughter back. And I was fearful that if I got the cops involved, Zanny the nanny would harm Kaylee. So at this point, police are still somewhat taking this seriously. So they try to track down Zanny the nanny, as ridiculous as this sounds. And they find an apartment that is connected to this name, Zenaida, right? And they go to the apartment, find out from the leasing office that it's been abandoned for 100 days. And this woman, they do track her down, Zenaida, doesn't even know Casey Anthony. Doesn't know her, never met her, has never worked as a nanny, has never seen this kid, Kaylee, has absolutely zero connection to her. So Casey also told police that they were like, where do you work? Like, where were you, like, looking for alibis? And she's like, I work in the events department at Universal Studios, Orlando. So they asked her, they said, take us to your office because they want to, like, search the office and whatnot. She leads them all the way to Universal Studios, like, to the park. And she starts, like, walking in with like a police escort, and she's waving to employees as if she knows them. She's like, hey, I'm back, kind of thing. No one recognizes her. Nobody knows her. And she gets all the way to like the end of this entrance and then turns around to the police and goes, so I don't actually work here. I got fired a few years ago.
I was going to say, had she ever worked there?
Universal was like, I think she was an employee there. I don't think she worked in the events department, but they were like, she was terminated years prior. Like, she has had zero affiliation with Universal. So it's very clear. She is a compulsive liar. And it's kind of like she just wants to see how far she can take this, but it just keeps incriminating her further. It's really bad. Really, really bad. So I would say immediately the games are just kind of over because she's taken into custody and they've got her eyes on her. This is possibly a case of a mother who's killed a child. And within a week, they would learn of some very incriminating details about what might have gone on here. So first and foremost, the car is searched. They use a canine to go to the car, which immediately signals there are traces of decomposition in the trunk. That is a definite. Additionally, they would take air samples, which I've never even heard of in forensics, air samples from inside the trunk and inside the car. Very clear indications. Dead body was in that car.
Oh my God.
But I know. This case, I'm sure it's studied, but like it has to be studied as to like what the hell went wrong here, because this isn't even a story of like a botched investigation. This is really a story of a jury that didn't know their head from their ass.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day. Now, the air samples are taken, confirmation there was a decomposing body in there, but the most interesting details, I would say, are the previous 31 days before Kaylee Anthony is reported missing. Her behavior, Casey's, is bizarre. During this month, where Kaylee is allegedly kidnapped, supposedly in the custody of Zanny the nanny, who is holding her hostage, for the entire month, Casey is photographed, she is videoed, she's documented at bars, clubs, house parties. She's entering hot body competitions. She's partying for the entire month that her daughter is supposedly kidnapped. She was witnessed, filmed, and photographed in all of these places countless times, drinking, having a good time, smiling. So let's pause right the there before I stroke out. Like
1:20:06.
Partying? Girl. Thank you.
How? Okay, this is like one of those moments where I really just cannot wrap my head around how a jury found her to be innocent.
It does not make sense. 31 days? She's partying? You know what's crazy too is like, even at this point, there were still people in the case who were willing to keep up the possibility of Zanny the nanny, because that wasn't even public knowledge at this point. That was just something the investigators knew. They were like, Zenaida, this woman, is clearly a name that you just like plucked from a phone book kind of thing. Like, this has zero connection to your daughter's disappearance. So she's partying all month long. I just had to pause there because I was like, I knew that was going to send a lot of people. And it's possibly the most damning part of the story. So like I said, the public does not have the knowledge that Kaylee Anthony was anything other than possibly kidnapped by this random woman, Zanny the nanny. So it becomes a national headline, and this is when the media circus and the frenzy kind of starts. There is a hunt for Zanny the nanny. And then Casey is finally arrested, just on the baseline of like pure child neglect, because everyone's like, if this kidnapping is real, I mean, how insane is it that you did not report that? You're a neglectful mother. So a manhunt ensues all across the country. People get revved up and they come in droves, hundreds of people to Orlando because they're hunting, because at this point, we don't even have a body of Kaylee. Then, once it comes out that Zenaida, this woman, has zero connection to Casey Anthony or this family, everything deviates from that narrative and it all goes back to Casey. There's quite a lot of coverage and spectacle at this point. And this is when it has a huge shift where everyone's saying, this is a mother who knows something and did something to her child, and we have to find where she hid her, thinking she's still alive. Then we get the biggest break in the case. On December 11th, 2008, there is a meter reader. His name was Roy Crunk. He was working the day near a wooded area, and he went deeper into the woods because he had to pee. And while he's out there, he caught something odd out of the corner of his eye. Deep into the woods, kind of near like a dark, like covered swampy area, he stumbled upon what looked like a partially buried black plastic bag. And from what he said, like his description, because he gave testimony too, he was in court about this. He was like, it could have just been trash, but there was something in my gut that just told me, go check it. Like, just go look and see what that is, even though it's dirty, even though it's in the mud and the swamp. So he described, he went over and he just started to kind of like poke around the bag and like get it out of the ground. Like, what it was like very shallowly covered. And he used his stick to kind of poke into it. And he remembers hearing something kind of hollow, like softly break apart inside. So then he used his hand and he lifted up the bag, and to his description, a decomposing human head rolled out of the bag to the ground. He said it was so grisly that he actually thought it might have been a Halloween mask. And this is really awful, so I'm going to give a warning before I say it. Because he thought it was a Halloween mask, he used his stick to poke through the eye socket to lift it up and look at it. Convinced it's a mask. It's like a decoration. He then realized at a closer look, it is a real human head of a child with duct tape on the mouth. He then dropped it in complete shock. 911 is called, and there's a 911 call of that as well, which if we have time at the end, I'll play it. An immediate search of the grounds would find the remaining parts of the body inside several bags, the presumed remains of Kaylee Anthony. Let's pause there just about that reveal. I know that's very graphic and very shocking to hear.
I had like tears in my eyes. Like, that is just, I guess when you just think about the age of this child, to think that regardless of if it was her mom or someone else, that is just so foul and disturbing. So it was her head in one bag and then other parts of her in other bags?
It wasn't clear to me, but she was pretty severely decomposed. So I think part of the assumption was not that she was dismembered necessarily, but that the body had just kind of fallen apart over the months that it was, in the elements, basically. Because for a part of that time, since it was near a swamp, I think it's believed she was maybe submerged in water too, which also helped to accelerate some of the decomposition. There's something that happens called, I've heard examiners talk about, it's called like skin slip, where that's like the first stage where the skin kind of detaches. But
where would we be had he not found that bag?
You know what's crazy about it? When I was actually reading through this, and I was like, well, this must have been stowed away someplace where nobody found it, because like all these search efforts in Orlando and like everybody's on foot, everybody's looking for it. This was blocks away from the Anthony's family home, from the grandparents' home where Casey was living.
Oh my God.
Blocks. For months this was out there. So it would take exactly 1 week from the time of this discovery for the medical examiner, who was actually Dr. G from Discovery Health. I don't know if you ever saw that show.
Oh, I didn't.
Dr. G Medical Examiner. I used to watch it when I was a kid. You could tell it was very, very impactful for me. They would inspect and she would test the remains, and it was publicly confirmed that this was in fact the body of Kaylee Anthony. And like I said, proximity-wise, this was just blocks away from the home. The scene and the remains told a very dark story of what happened here to Kaylee Anthony. Her body, like I said, was actually in multiple pieces, and it was wrapped in a Winnie the Pooh blanket. And parts of it, it looked like, were partially separated into multiple black trash bags, and then the entire collection of the remains was thrown into a laundry bag. The corpse was then discarded in an area of what appeared to be swamp-like for the intention of hiding it somewhere in the mud or the dirt. And the examiner, Dr. G, she could not determine, because of how skeletal parts of the remains were, the exact cause of death. But just from how badly decomposed she was, how submerged, or how intentionally buried and submerged she was, and the duct tape on the mouth, it is assumed her death was a homicide and not an accident that was covered up. It's also around this time of the discovery that the media coverage on this really, really grows and kind of spirals out of control. And there is immense pressure on this family, and really for the public, or for the prosecutors rather, to call for a conviction and sentence this mother to death. It was unbelievable how crazy this ramped up. Do you remember this turning point in the case, like the actual discovery and trial? Because this is really the meat of the case.
I feel like I do. I don't remember the like finding the body, like the parking meter guy finding the.
Oh, he was a meter reader.
Meter reader.
Is that like highway meters?
Okay, I was going to say, is that like those things? They almost look like cameras that are on like a tripod and they're reading.
I don't know, actually.
I honestly have no idea.
He was a meter reader. That's all I knew of his position.
We got to look that up. Census. So I remember when it was like the moment, oh, okay, she's done for. I do remember that. Mm-hmm. And I think it would have been a result of that, but I don't remember this whole meter reader finding like the actual discovery. It's picking it so up grisly. It was a Halloween mask. I don't remember that at all.
The description, because he talked about this in court, and it's really devastating to hear him talk about it, because you can tell the guy is scarred from what he saw and what he experienced, and he apologized actually for the handling of the remains, because he just didn't know. Because you would never, I mean, I would assume that I'm going to stumble upon a body, but that's only because I'm prepped and groomed for it always.
Right.
But most people, if they find something suspicious, they might check it out of curiosity, but nobody thinks they're going to find a corpse, let alone a corpse of a child.
Like a super high profile search that's also happening at that time.
Oh my God. Yeah. But I mean, that, to get back into it, like that really is what, like, that was the turning point, the 24/7 news coverage. And a lot of it actually centralized around, the defense of George and Cindy, because at this point they were willing to believe their daughter's story. In the beginning, you could tell from that call, it kind of sounded like Cindy was like against Casey. There's a lot of C names in here.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of sounded like she was willing to say, like, there's something wrong here. Like, there's a body in the trunk. Or it smells like there's a body in the trunk. Like, she just admitted to me, like, it sounds like she's throwing Casey under the bus. They completely pivot their story. But following the discovery of Kaylee Anthony, oh my God, I have to get my name straight here. George Anthony would actually attempt to take his own life, which a lot of people have gone two different directions on this. Some people say that this spells grief, and some people say that this spells guilt. So I'm curious to talk about this towards the end once we like kind of break this down and break down the defense. So he was saved. The exact nature of the event is not public knowledge, although it is claimed that his grief was unbearable and that he said he needed to be with Kaylee. And the pressure became very unreal. And really, I would say that this is when the case kind of took on like a sick fascination for people, because it became a sport for people to watch the trial and speculate on what was going to happen in this case. People were selling tickets to get into the courtroom. That is unfathomable. To be there to see Casey Anthony selling tickets.
That's disgusting.
Scalping. It was, I mean, I don't even know if it was like press or like journalists who were so hungry because it was televised nationally, but it was people who just wanted to be there for such a historic and infamous moment in a weird way. Doesn't that sit strange with you? Doesn't that feel dark?
I just don't. I so don't abide by that that line of thinking. I just think giving. I honestly think that it's very detached. It's detached, and I, honest to God, feel like it fuels. I know that a jury has to examine the evidence and look at it for what it is and make their case or make their verdict. I think the more media coverage that gets around these cases, it tends to sway a jury to do something. I know that that's totally off the, like, out of nowhere. And this is purely my opinion.
No, but I think that's very real. I think that's true.
I think human nature, to have that moment where you realize, oh my God, I am a juror on a huge case right now. And I could be, Joe Schmo, and I am now making a pivotal decision on the most high profile homicide case. It's historic. Yeah. And like, I don't know. I do think there's some element there that's like the human psyche gets overwhelmed by the coverage of it, your power in that position. And that's why sometimes we don't always make the correct decision. I honestly, really in my gut, do feel like there's truth to that.
I agree with you. I think that's such a good point. And that's really well put too. But what's interesting about these high profile cases, and I think about this a lot, is that they're not allowed to watch or consume any news coverage on the case, because it could sway a juror. I can't even imagine how they found a jury of unbiased jurors, because people have kind of coined this like phrase around Casey Anthony, the most hated woman in America, because she's the mother who killed her child. But let's say they find the jury that doesn't know much about the case. From what I've seen in other high profile cases that have been depicted on television, like the O.J. Simpson case, they were basically kept in like solitary confinement for the entire trial. Like they were kept in hotels. They weren't allowed to like be around each other except for when they were deliberating or listening to the case or reviewing evidence. No TVs, no media, no cell phones. Like they can't consume anything that will like sway them. That's maddening. Like you would just go crazy and want it to be over.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, how can you, if you get in the courtroom and you know that they're selling tickets for people to get into the courthouse to watch the trial, you know what's going on. You know that there's something nefarious about the whole ordeal.
But you may not even know the POV from the outside world. I mean, for all they knew, if they were really insulated, it's difficult to believe if they were, but if they were really insulated, they may know that it's a high profile case, but that the entire world is rooting for Casey's innocence. Like they may be completely warped.
Except she's the one, she's being prosecuted though. Like that's where I kind of am like, I think that when there's that much coverage around the whole thing, I think as a juror, it's pretty like if there's that much just hoopla around it, you're like, oh, if she doesn't get convicted, some shit's gonna go down. 134.
Well, thank you. Do you know what the actual defense is of the case? Like what her defense team came up with? Because if you are insulated and you're not watching the news coverage and you can't tell like what the the public POV is of this, and you hear this defense argument, if you're insulated enough, I can see why people would believe this.
I don't remember it. Oh God, I'm gonna get thrown.
No. No. Because like, it's pretty horrific. I'll get into it in a second, but it basically spells out Casey's innocence and claims that the father, Casey's father, the grandfather George Anthony, was the culprit who killed Kaylee and then disposed of the remains. Completely absolves her.
And he was the one trying to take his own life.
Right after the discovery, which a lot of people, which they used in the defense to suggest that he knew the jig was up and he was trying to get out while he could. That, coupled with Cindy going on the stand, this gets insane. She starts making claims, taking the fault for like some of the evidence that comes to light. I've got to keep going because there's actually, when this trial actually gets underway, the evidence that comes up, you're going to flip your damn lid. So, okay, where are we at? So Kaylee is dead. There are all these eyes on Casey Anthony. She is the presumed killer of her own daughter. And we have an investigation that would only become more and more insidious. Now, at this time, it's not actually clear what the Anthonys thought of their daughter. They didn't know whether to believe what she was telling people, that she's innocent, even though, all signs kind of point to guilty here. And then Casey is imprisoned at this point for years before there's like so much lead time before the trial actually starts. Because this happened in 2008. Bodies discovered in 2008. I believe it was 2008. Hold on. Let me double check let me fact check. Do you remember what I said? December 11th?
I think December 11th.
Yeah, December
2008.
Yeah. I was confusing myself.
No, December 11th. December 11th.
I was like, oh, 2011? No. It was 2008. Trial doesn't begin until 2011. There is so much time that passes. So comes, time for the trial. The case is reviewed, brought before a jury. Everyone is shocked to hear Casey Anthony is planning to plead not guilty to the case. She pled guilty for 13 fraudulent check charges, very benign. But as for any of the charges related to her daughter's murder, she insisted she was not at fault. Here is where things get muddy and dark. Searches of the Anthony family computer are brought up because the computer is confiscated and searched, and they trace searches back all the way to 2008. There are some pretty damning results in the search history. Dating back to before Kaylee disappeared, it appeared that somebody in the home was searching how to break a neck, and someone was searching chloroform. Now, it would seem very obviously tied to Casey, and yet Cindy gets on the stand and testifies and claimed that she made those searches. So the prosecutors ask her to spell chloroform because it was spelled correctly in the search. She couldn't spell it. Spelled it incorrectly. And she also starts making up, they're like, what about the search, how to break a neck? She starts making up this story and saying that she accidentally searched how to break a neck from a YouTube, in quotes, saying it was a pop-up. So she's kind of just like an older woman who like doesn't fully understand like how search engines and the internet like maybe work. So she's like trying in real time to like craft a lie to cover her daughter's ass. And she keeps like maintaining this. She's like, I'm the one who did those searches. But they go through a backlog of work schedules and find evidence that proves that at the time those things were searched, Cindy was at work. It could not have been her. Like, the story is defunct. So why, all of a sudden, is she taking the fall for something that is so clearly not her doing? What are your thoughts on that? Because people have a very skewed perception of like where Cindy stands in all of this and her daughter's innocence.
Well, I think it's kind of like what I think I brought up at the beginning, that maybe at some point you realize, honestly, similar to Casey, you start believing your own myth that your kid is innocent because it's just too hard to reckon with the idea that this actually happened. And you're trying to do whatever you can to just save your kid's ass. I mean, I don't know. I honest to God do not know how you go from calling 911 saying, it smells like there's a dead body in the back of my daughter's car, to then saying that you searched how to break necks and chloroform. And that's just run of the mill search history for you. Like,
and making up this bogus story saying, yeah, we have to consider years have passed at this point. Like, it's 3-4 years later in 2011 that she's had time to reckon with this and figure out, like, how do I want to go about this? Like, the next year of my life in my daughter's case and trial. She's lost Kaylee, lost her granddaughter, almost lost her husband. Her daughter is in prison, probably going to, go down and be imprisoned or put to death. She's lost everything in her life. And she is a public face, very much a public face in this trial, just the same as Casey is, because everybody came after the Anthonys as a whole because they were defending Casey. And I mean, they, every single day, like, reporters basically lived outside of their house for years. And then when the trial ramped up, like, it just got a lot worse. So I can believe what you're saying, that, like, at a certain point, if you make a decision that you're going to just believe what your daughter's told you, you do so. Nothing else makes sense. This is what happened. I did those things. It must have been me. Maybe I don't recall it, but I searched those things. I searched up chloroform, even though I don't know how to spell it. Like, it's nonsensical.
Yeah.
So here's the story that kind of pieces together from, like, this is most likely the true story of what people think happened to Kaylee, because it still isn't really explained. We don't have a cause of death. What we do think and what we kind of know is that Casey did not pay for babysitters. And this is really, really dark. What it's believed she would do is she would drug her daughter either with Benadryl or something stronger so that she would fall asleep so that Casey could go out and party at clubs. Now, it's believed at a certain point she looked into using chloroform to do this. So she was able to use chloroform and then put duct tape over her daughter's mouth with the intention of her passing out, and then left for the club. By the time she came home, she realized that Kaylee had suffocated from the chloroform, and she had killed her daughter. It's believed that Casey then panicked, wrapped her up in the Winnie the Pooh blanket that she was sleeping in, put her in her trunk in the heat, the Orlando heat of the summer, and panicked for several days trying to figure out, what do I do, until eventually the smell really became unbearable. And she figured she had to get rid of Kaylee's body. Threw her in the woods, very shallowly buried it near the swamp, ditched the car, and then went the following month partying like nothing had ever happened. That is a very insidious story, but it is believed that is most likely what happened.
I'm literally looking at my heart rate right now because it just...
I know. I don't know why I do this to you every week.
No, it's not even... Can I say with this case, it's not even that... It's more so I'm trying to imagine what is running through her head in that moment, in those days, and then to go, like, I was on the ride, and then for you to say, and then she went back to partying for the remainder of the time until they found the body, as if it never happened. And I'm just, I can't even, I can't reconcile that. Like, I just can't.
Drink it. Like, if you look at the pictures of her around this time, like, after, if this is all true that she did this and got rid of that body, to just think about, like, you held your dead child in your arms, wrapped her up and put her in a bag, and not even discarded her, kept her in your trunk, driving around for days, knowing your child is in your trunk.
Like a toy.
Throw her, like, yeah.
Like a broken in a baby doll that you don't want anymore. Like, it's so...
It's so disturbing to think that, like, it was possible for her not only to do that, but then, like you said, go to the clubs, start entering, like, hot body competitions, doing, like, Jello shots. That's crazy. That is so beyond insidious that the only way I can actually reconcile it is that there has to be a touch of, like, insanity there, in the sense that she is such a firm pathological liar that she's beyond the pale. Like, it's she believes her own innocence because she blocked it out. Because I can't imagine anybody has a poker face to do that and just go on with their life. I can't.
You can't say poker face.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you for pulling me out of that because I was feeling really dark for a second. My stomach's hurting, actually.
No, so is mine. So is mine. I really, this is so dark.
It messed me up bad. Well, it's about to get darker because I'm about to run you through the defense, Casey Anthony's defense in court. Okay. I'm going to need you to grip something for this because...
I do you know what's so funny? I have literal silly putty that I keep on my desk when I get stressed out, and I'm about to pull it out right now. I swear to God, I was looking at it, itching to grab it while you were talking, and I was like, I can't screw up the audio.
You need to. I need to send you some like stress like dummies or like something to like squeeze. Some slime.
It's a little rabbit.
That is a great idea for like merch for us where we can... That's so cute.
A little CreepTime stress ball. Yeah.
A CreepTime stress ball. Oh, just a little ball of hell. Mm-hmm. Well, grab onto something because I'm about to tell you what her defense team comes up with. So their opening statement is shocking. Like, it is wild. And people actually like audibly gasp in the court. They insinuate that the Anthonys, the grandparents, are not people to feel bad for and that they are not what everybody assumes them to be. No one should assume their innocence in the death of Caylee Anthony. This is their claim. So Casey Anthony goes on the stand to claim that she has been sexually molested by her father since she was a little girl and that this has continued into adulthood. And this is part of how she learned to lie. They start leading with this idea that Casey Anthony is a liar. She's a pathological liar. You can't refute it. She's a compulsive liar. And the reason being is because she was molested by her father from a very young age, and it completely reshaped her psyche and how she's able to block things out. This is an interesting angle that they're taking. Now, they then further alleged that George, the father of Casey, or Caylee's grandfather, is the one responsible for the death. So this is the story. It's that Caylee was unsupervised at the Anthony's family home near the pool, drowned, and that George panicked, used his knowledge of the police force to collect the body, get rid of it, and stow it away, even though it was very poorly stowed in a trunk and then in the woods, wasn't buried. So the story is alleging that Casey was either threatened by him to keep quiet or didn't know. And if she was threatened and did know, she blocked it out and then continued to party for the month. And then by the time the body was revealed, he attempted suicide because he thought everything was over and the cover-up was blown. There is an even further twist to this. The defense alludes that it is possible that George is actually Caylee's father. And he was terrified that with the discovery of the body and doing DNA testing, they would be able to determine that not only was this Casey's daughter, obviously, but this was his daughter. That is a dark, dark, dark accusation that they made. So what are your initial thoughts just on the defense and what they're coming up with?
I mean, if you have jurors that are willing to believe the like most, I mean, oh God, like the most, what's the right word? Not like hyperbolic, but like the most dramatic.
But it is hyperbolic, yeah.
Yeah, like dramatic possible counter to what just happened. Then I feel like that was their angle. It was like, what is the craziest thing that we can possibly spin this into that will almost throw, it will be so nuts that it will throw off the scent just enough that you could get by.
That is exactly the tactic they took. And you know what's even crazier is that putting Casey Anthony on the stand, and you kind of alluded to this before, you were like, she is a damn good actress. She sells hard on that stand, talking about, I mean, he completely denied. He was like, of course I never molested my daughter. Of course all of this is completely fake and like none of this is true. She's up there sobbing. She's talking about like childhood memories that probably didn't even happen of molestation. She's sobbing on the stand. Like, it's a convincing performance, a shockingly convincing performance, but that is a symptom of being a pathological liar. That's why they're effective, because they can believe the narrative they've spun so well that you start to believe it too. Of course you start to believe it. How could you deny what you're seeing? She's sobbing on the stand.
So is the idea that her father ever abused her, is that fully untrue? Like, do we rule that out later, or do we think there's some semblance of truth to it?
I mean, there is absolutely no evidence. I will say there's no evidence to show or prove that he ever abused his daughter. There's nothing to prove that. For everything that him and Cindy have said, it's completely made up. Something definitely happened to Casey Anthony to create the person she is, to create a pathological liar. And it's very possible she was molested by somebody. She was abused. It may not have been the Anthonys. It may not have been her father. It could have been someone else. And maybe they took that story, twisted it to somebody who was in Kaylee's life and would have had motive to cover this up. And that was what they ran with. It's a really big swing, and it's a really, really bold defense, but I think it's exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Throw the biggest curveball you can, because it is going to knock the entire jury on their ass, so they won't even know which way's up.
Yeah.
They will question. They will question her guilt.
God, this case is so gross. It's so
I know.
gross.
I can tell this is like really like sitting horribly. It's not a fun case to cover. I thought it would be.
It's a lot like JonBenet. It's a lot like JonBenet. It's just so.
It is
just disturbing, and like the most pure human connections that you feel like you can have in your life with your parents, your children, the people closest to you, could be violated or ruptured in some way so foully. It's just like it just strikes, if you're a good person, strikes such a just horrendously sickening chord.
I wonder if that's why people gravitated towards it a lot when it had its media peak between 2008 2011, was that in a really dark way, it holds up a mirror, I would say, to a lot of the darker side of America.
Yeah.
And seeing a family that, like, on the outside might have just been a very normal family, you know, two grandparents, their young daughter, and then a grandchild. And like what you're saying, to imagine if all of this were true, a 2-year-old dead, a daughter who possibly was impregnated by her father, like, it's just, you're seeing the worst possible scenario of what on the outside looked like a normal family, and just how dark this is. I think that's why people feel fascinated by it, and they like want to understand like how something so insidious could just be. Well, we're finally at the verdict. I don't know if you're ready for this. I don't know if anyone's ready for this, but following both the defense and the prosecution, both of which I would say the prosecution was like undoubtedly compelling. I mean, it seems so clear from the outside what exactly happened here. I can certainly understand, because she had a damn good lawyer, and she really did do her part up on the stand to sell the story, the opposition. Clearly it was effective, because this is what happens next. So we arrive at the verdict of what is arguably one of the most infamous cases to ever be televised in true crime history. The outcome of this had one of the largest days in media coverage in the United States. It is a jury of 7 women and 5 men who listened to countless hours of testimony and reviewed evidence for every single element of this case that was public facing. They saw the body, they saw the trunk, they saw the search results, they saw photos of Casey partying, every single piece of it. And on July 5th, 2011, a jury deliberated for more than 10 hours in private. They then came back to the courtroom, and on live television, to the shock of everybody in that room and to the entire country, they found the defendant, Casey Anthony, not guilty in the murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee Anthony. They would cite insufficient evidence beyond what was presented to undoubtedly prove and rule that Casey Anthony is the sole person responsible for this crime. And people went hysterical. The entire country watched this on live TV, and people rioted. There was nothing they could do. There was nothing they could say. The case and the trial were over. Just initial thoughts for how that hit you.
I do remember watching I didn't watch the verdict live, but I know I've seen the clip of. I can honestly.
Everybody's seen the clip of the moment.
Yeah,
everyone
the
has
moment.
seen that clip.
I mean, everybody, and just people like audibly being like freaking out.
The energy in that room of being in that courtroom when that happened.
Can you imagine?
I can't even imagine. Just like the breath sucked out of your lungs to hear not guilty, and see her sitting there must have been so wild.
Here's what I'm curious about. We've been talking about how she is a pathological liar, how her brain chemistry must be altered in such a way that she's able to believe her own myths about things. What I would be so curious about as somebody in that moment, you're about to get your verdict read. In her, if she had truth serum on her to know whether or not she thought she was actually going to be convicted or not, the shift in your brain when they say not guilty and whatever outcome she was expecting, either let's say she did believe her own myth and she was like, yeah, I'm obviously not guilty, like, thank you. Or this whole time she's been acting, which is what I think is going on. Acting. You're in that moment and you're like, all right, here we go. The jig is up. And then they say,
right. Like guilty. You can only go as far with your performance. Yeah.
And you have to, like, I need to go back and watch her face during that moment because I kind of remember it. But like, I would love to just read her face again just to see whether or not I think she truly, truly believed her own myth up until that moment, or if she knew the whole time it was all an act and then she finally got away with it.
I did watch it. Can I give you my take?
Yeah.
I think in the very moment that they were announcing her verdict, I think she knew the truth of what she did. I think she knew the truth. From what I saw on her face, I think she was sitting there and I could see, even though she had a really good poker face, I guess you could say. I got to stop saying that. But I could see her, the wheels spinning, where she was preparing herself to hear guilty. And then the very second they said not guilty, there was a slight moment of disbelief where she kind of froze. And then it was like right back into the narrative. Starts crying. And the crying wasn't like, I can't believe I got away with it. It wasn't like that. It was like, finally, justice, like, for my innocence. I was almost wrongfully convicted. Justice for an innocent woman was like the tone of what she was giving. And like the attorneys are like rubbing her back and consoling her. It's quite the show. It is quite the show. And I think what's even more insidious about it, one last thing, is I think, if I'm remembering, they pan to the Anthonys. Stone. That told me everything I need to know. I just gave myself chills.
You just gave me chills.
Am I narrating an audiobook? What am I on right now? Jesus.
I need to see. I don't remember what the Anthonys look like. I need to go back and watch that.
Their initial reaction, maybe it was disbelief. Some people might read it differently, but to me, it was disbelief in a different way.
Yeah. Like, I cannot believe we just supported our daughter.
The outcome of this. Yeah. They're not in contact. I mean, that's the thing too. After the outcome of the verdict in the case, and she eventually leaves a free woman, they don't reconcile as a family. I mean, how could the entire defense was building the case that her father killed her daughter, you know?
But he didn't go to jail or anything.
No, of course. There was no evidence whatsoever. I mean, there's never been any evidence of like the abuse that she was talking about. The entire thing, for all intents and purposes, sounds like a story that was made up. People say, well, there's possibility there could be truth to it. There's possibility there could be truth to anything. But I'm just saying the facts of the case, the evidence, all signs point to Casey Anthony being the sole person who did this. And I also never understood the drowning theory, because I was like, what in God's name would an accidental drowning of this little girl have to do with putting duct tape over her mouth?
I was just thinking the same thing when you were describing it.
I was like, don't feed me a load of horse.
Why would you ever
I'm getting mad.
I know.
like, I mean,
I thought the same thing when you were describing it.
It has nothing to do with accidental drowning. I mean, at least if you're going to spin some narrative to say the grandfather did it, keep with the thing about the chloroform for whatever reason. But the accidental drowning to then duct tape, I don't buy it. And then in Casey's car for several days was a bot. I don't buy any part of it. Also, what time is it? I got to mark that down. I swore.
Right at 2 hours. 2:20. Yeah. 2.
I'll say 1:59 to be on the safe side. Now, I do have some, I mean, that is the verdict. We know that. I do have some aftermath thoughts just about what happens after this. Let's see. Now, Casey was sentenced to 4 years in prison for her other crimes because she did not get out of this scot-free. But at that point, in waiting for her trial, this was the part that burned everybody's ass. In waiting for her actual trial, she had already served the time that she got for her convictions. So by the time this trial ends, she gets to walk out a free woman. There was a heightened sensitivity that Casey would be killed upon her departure from prison. So it was crazy what they arranged for her. She would leave prison with her attorney, goes into a private vehicle with a police escort, which then took them into a private parking garage where there was a vehicle swap that then took her to a private plane, which brought her to an unknown destination. So she goes into hiding for some time, disconnects from the parents entirely, and everybody wanted to know, like, what happened to her? Like, where do you go from there as someone who is just the most famous woman in America for the most insidious and evil thing? So we would learn that, of course, she is still out there today. She's living her life, working a job, and she is acting as if this never happened. Reportedly, she became, I need alcohol after this, a live-in nanny. A live-in nanny. For the private investigator who worked on her defense team. He hired her as his live-in nanny for some time. And now she works for, when you were saying she works for a private eye team, It's his team.
Okay. I remembered something weird about that. As the nanny.
I need a cigarette, and I don't even smoke. I desperately need a cigarette.
I need a lobotomy. Like, I...
like... It's almost farce. It's farce. It's farce.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, truly, she is that sociopathic that she would actually go do that. She would actually
growing up later.
No,
being the kid, growing up as like a teenager and being like, "Who? Oh, did you have a nanny when you were a kid?" Yeah, Casey Anthony was my nanny. That can't become a party joke.
She just really, this whole thing is a lesson in leaning the hell into some evil.
But I mean, just believing beyond anything, your own story. It's honestly like a case study of, human endurance is not the right word for this at all, because I am not trying to glorify this, but it should be a case study on just like the capacity of the brain to suspend your disbelief.
Yes, like really. The malleability of your own psyche is really what I keep thinking. Like, she really has completely convinced and compartmentalized, and to the point that even after it's all over, she is still believing that she did nothing wrong.
I know, she's still in it. The world building that she did never stopped.
Yeah.
So because the thing is, after this, obviously nobody wants to mess with Casey Anthony. She's not going to get a job anywhere, and she wasn't immediately hired as the live-in nanny. So she was trying to make money any way she could. Apparently, she was extremely broke. Had to live with roommates at a certain point, which I couldn't even imagine. Could you imagine Facebook Marketplace finding a roommate? Casey Anthony?
No.
I need another cigarette, but. She tried to write and publish a book, got blackballed from the entire publishing world. No publisher would ever want to work with her. And today, she gives sporadic interviews and still maintains her innocence, that she really, really has no idea what happened to Kaylee. And has said on the record, and I watched this in an interview this afternoon, I sleep pretty good at night. I sleep pretty good at night. Even if, for the giggles of it all, to say that Casey Anthony is innocent in all of this, your daughter was viciously killed. You sleep pretty good at night?
She has no remorse or no guilt or no...
Nothing. There's nothing in her.
She never wanted that child. I mean, she never wanted to be a mom,
absolutely
clearly.
Not. No.
I love how I was like, yeah, I'll maintain neutrality. I'm really like, she didn't want a kid. I just went full Nancy Grace. She never
I was
wanted
about to say,
I
was like, I quite literally just saw a blonde sprout come out of your head.
I literally felt it.
She never wanted that child.
She never wanted that child. In you. Oh my God. Like
Nancy
my
must have been on this for
twitching.
Like 10 years. I know. It's insane. But that is, I will just conclude here and just say, to this day, the exact and official ruling of what happened to Kaylee Anthony is still labeled on paper as an unknown because there is no cause of death, and all those involved continue to walk free and without explanation for the senseless and horrific murder of a 2-year-old girl in 2008. That is the final period in the story of Kaylee Anthony and how Casey Anthony probably got away with something horrible. Welcome back, everybody.
I literally want to clap for your research, but I'm like, I can't clap. Like,
please don't. She deserves nothing.
I cannot. I'm like just dead air on the other side of this, because I guess all I keep thinking of, there's so much evil, and I don't even want to like say that out loud because I don't want to like speak that into existence, but just this is beyond measure of like someone did something bad and they got away with it. This is someone did something bad, they got away with it, and they still don't think they did anything wrong. Or they're portraying that they didn't do anything wrong, which is just like, I can't.
Yeah, at least that's what we think. In a lot of ways, some people have said, and I read a lot about people thinking about this, there are some people who defend her non-guilty verdict for a different reason other than saying she's innocent. They say, no, she's absolutely guilty. But they made some kind of an argument, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they made an argument saying for her to not go to prison is actually a worse fate. Because she now exists within society she doesn't have, 4 walls around her as a given. She can't work a normal job. She can't go anywhere. She lives among everyone as like a leper, like she's a true outcast, like exiled, but living within the confines of the world around her forever. That is her prison. She made her prison for herself. It's kind of a dark way to think about it, but there's no way that she can escape the treatment she deserved for what she did.
Do we know where she lives now?
I don't. Please, nobody go and find her. And do anything. Don't put that on us.
I couldn't remember, like, from that. I very briefly,
I'm like 448 Encino Drive.
I had that Hulu documentary on in the background whenever it came out, and I really should have paid more attention to it. But I
couldn't watch
couldn't remember if she was in Florida or if she was in California. Like, I felt like it was something.
It would make sense that I would assume she stayed in Florida. Oh, I actually think she moved to Colorado for a little bit. I don't know why I thought that. I remember hearing she was trying to work as a photographer.
Okay.
Imagine getting your headshots done by Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony did my headshots.
I mean, the only thing that she should go and do is become a monk and just live in solitude and like try to pray that you get yourself. I'm not even like, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not even like that, like pray and get rid of your sins, but you better go do some like that right now. 209.
Do it. Thank you. I was already getting my cursor out. I'm like, what's the time? I hear it coming. But the thing is about this case, as horrific as it is to cover, I'm actually very happy that we did. That was really tough to get through, but it is a historic case to cover in the same way that, covering JonBenet Ramsey, even if you know the story, even if it's really difficult to get through, because the case has never seen justice, very much like how this one has not, it is important to keep talking about it. And not because it's an unsolved case in the way that like people will forget about it. Nobody's ever going to forget about Casey Anthony or Kaylee Anthony. They won't. But it is important to remind people of what happened here and what a miscarriage of justice this was. And I don't mean to try to like sound overly eloquent here or anything, but I really do feel like this was a very, very grim public demonstration of how the judicial system failed.
Yeah.
It really did fail. And somebody got away with something, whether you think it was George or whether you think it was Casey, somebody got away with something because a little girl didn't get justice. And that's all I'll say on the Casey Anthony verdict.
And season 2 is back, y'all.
That it is. I was like, can we go back to talking about Vegas? Can we go back to talking about something else? How you doing?
Baby.
Thank you for sitting through that. That was a
Nancy
monster
Grace,
of a case.
If she doesn't listen to CreepTime, she better start listening now. Is all I'll
Watch
say.
her write us the most scathing review.
I know.
Like find her way to Apple Podcasts and go, how could they? They butchered the race. Like, can you see it? I can hear it.
I can absolutely see it, and I'll be like, "Baby, meet us at Smith and Walensky's for a tomahawk steak, and we'll discuss this."
Well, a bottle of red will be fine.
Yeah.
Y'all, if creepers, if you guys have any inkling to want to start making like fake Nancy accounts and DMing us, please do so just for the giggles of it, because like we'll know it's fake. Like I'll know it's fake, you'll know it's fake, but just for the humor of it. And you could say things to like foul things to us. It's fine as long as Nancy is the profile picture. We'll be fine.
Of course.
How does she handle all this? How does Nancy sleep at night, just like with all this kind of racking around in her brain? Is she good, do you think?
You know, I don't think she's good, but I will say the thing I admire about Nancy is that boy, does she stick to her truth. Once she feels like something is off, she will stick with it. And I think that's probably why she's able to do this, is because she just sticks to her damn guns and she doesn't really contemplate whether or not she looks at, the facts, and then she has her opinions and then she just runs with it. Yeah.
No, it's true. In the court of Nancy Grace, the verdict is always correct.
Always.
It's what she feels.
100%.
And with that, creepers, I've got to wrap us up because we have taken too much of your time, but we just love spending time with you, and we're so excited to be back. This was such a great episode to come back on.
So
really
good.
Juicy, really meaty. Happy we covered it. So one last thing, I guess we should just remind everybody, the contest is going to be announced next week. Stu is going to pick at random one of our premium subscribers who will be gifted a year of premium for free. So we can't wait to do it. And with that, Stu, any final words? Should we say goodbye to everybody? Goodbye and good luck.
Goodbye and good luck. And we love y'all. And we're so excited to be back for season 2.
Season 2. Bye, everybody.
Bye.